and welcome to the final video on what to do if your book stops selling. Now, this video is a in conclusion video, okay? So what we're going to do is two things. One is we're just kind of wrap up what we talked about, okay? We went through a bunch of methods in terms of what approaches you can take to try to improve your game and to try to increase sales of your book. All the methods offered, like the copycat method, for example, they do work, right? They do take work, but they do work. But for those of you who have tuned into this series and were, say, expecting me to give you some sort of recipe or some sort of formula or some sort of equation on how to jumpstart your book sales and how to hit the top charts, and this is the way to do it, and there's a secret way, and here it is. No. I'm sorry that I let you down, but at the same time, I'm not sorry that I let you down. And the reason is this, is because there is no secret formula. There is no secret recipe. Anyone who says otherwise is selling you something. End of story, all right? And this is the part that book marketers, like those who solicit their services, don't want you to know. They don't want you to know that there is not a secret formula. They don't want you to know that there is not a secret recipe, right? They're trying to sell you a service. No. How it works is, if there was a secret recipe, if there was a secret formula, it would have gotten out by now and everybody would be doing it, right? Right. Okay. So that being said, it's just funny how people think. Anyway, there's no secret formula, guys. Okay. So basically how it works, though, is what I've given you now, though, is the key to a, we could call it a secret formula, but it's not. What it is if you looked at everything we discussed in the previous videos, okay, when we talked about the copycat method, we're talking about the inventory, the self-inventory regarding the project, that kind of stuff, right? All those items have one thing in common, is they're all based on principles. Right? Behind any form of marketing plan, behind any form of even decisions you make in life, behind anything that you do that involves some sort of effort, that involves some sort of planning, that involves some sort of method, there's always principles underlying what you do, right? We don't always see them. We always often look at the surface, right? But beneath it all, there's always principles. I mean, even in the world of finance, right? There's no secret way to get rich. It's an issue of following financial principles, and if you follow them correctly, then yes, you will have huge gains in whatever it is you're involved in. But again, if you ignore the principles behind it, the why behind it, the reasons behind it, then you're not going to be able to execute it properly. And the same thing applies here for the book marketing, right? This is about principles. And if you go back to the previous videos, and if you watch them again, pay attention to the principles behind what is being said. That's where the power lies, right? Because the thing about principles is they're truths. Truths in and of themselves are irrefutable, they're concrete, they're solid, they're fact, end of story, done, right? Principle is a principle for a reason. They're called principles because they are principles, right? They're pillars, they're important. And so that was the goal with these videos, was to give you guys principles on book marketing. I gave suggestions and to get you going, give ideas in that sense on the surface, right? But beneath all that stuff, that's the part I wanted you to learn. That's the part that affects how I work and how I am able to jumpstart things when things slow down sometimes. That's how some of my contemporaries work when they want to give a kickstart behind some things that are lagging. They bring in principles, right? And then they put all that into the method, and the method is what is executed, and then because it's driven by principles, ergo the result works, provided that you're adhering to solid principles, okay? So that's the secret. That's the secret no one wants you to know, is that it's not based on method, it's not based on formula, it's based on principles. And if you apply that to your, whether it's the actual creation of the work, or it's the marketing of the work, or whether it's a life item, or like I mentioned earlier, a financial item, whatever it is, principles are there for a reason. We learn principles in kindergarten. I mean, all of our basic life lessons, I mean, like that poster says, everything you need to learn about life you learned in kindergarten is true. Why? Because in kindergarten, you were taught principles, right? You're taught basics. You were taught the underlying core of how to live a human life, right? Don't punch your friend. Don't bite your friend. Don't call them names. Don't steal stuff, right? Don't take the teacher's thing off the desk. Like, all sorts of things, right? Don't touch stuff that's hot. Like, but those are all things that are principles. And they work. And we've carried, all of us who've grown up into adulthood have taken all those basic things and applied them to our lives. And that's why none of us are walking around with burnt fingers, because we stopped touching the hot stove, right? So it's the same thing here, okay? So that's my encouragement, is this. Now that we've sort of established some methods that we could look at, I want you to look at the principles behind it. Because if you take those principles and those pillars and then apply them to new ideas, new concepts, and even when you do come, say, with something that's not, like I didn't mention, but you have your own idea and it's great, that's fine. Take that idea, use it for sure, give it a whirl, because again, trial and error, but at the same time, try to look behind the scenes on whatever it is that you thought of, and what is the principle behind what you thought about? What is the principle that drove this idea of yours? What is the principle that's going to drive this idea forward to propel your book sales, right? So that's the thing. And that's what I wanted to conclude with, is to say that, one, yes, I'm sorry, there is no secret method. But two, there is the secret method of principles. And that needs to be looked at. You know, we live in a very much, I won't get into too much commentary, but bottom line is we live in a very surface level society, right? We're used to seeing things on the surface. I mean, and advertisers know this, right? That's why we get slammed with all sorts of, you know, whether it's glamorous images or exciting movie clips or whatever. It's all superficial stuff, right? But underneath all that, these guys are putting in principles that get your attention. It's no different than when you start a movie trailer, right? What movie trailers intrigue us the most? Not the ones that start off slow and humdrum, but the ones that start off with a gripping intro, some sort of scene or some sort of action point that gets our attention, right? And visually, that's what we're experiencing, but what is it behind it? It's a sudden sense of urgency. It's a sudden sense that something's wrong. That's the principle that got you hooked onto the trailer to watch, for you to watch now the rest of the trailer, right? And it's no different than in a book. Same idea, right? Like people, I don't do this, but some people do in bookstores, right? They'll pick a book off the shelf that might seem interesting and read like the first few pages. And again, the author's job is to what? Hook from the start, right? And how do they do that? Well, on the surface, there's a story, but behind that, underneath in the writing, is a principle, right? And there's something there that's grabbing your attention and pulling you into the book and pulling you into the story. And then therefore, when you read your first few pages in the bookstore, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, you know what? This actually is pretty good. I'm going to pick this up and see what the rest is about. So again, principle, 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 principle. Okay. If you're looking for more like itemized, like do this, do that, do this, do that, or try this, try that, try this, try that type of stuff. I mean, we could do hundreds of videos just on those things alone. But instead, I say those things, I have those things on my Patreon page. I have like specifics in terms of that. Items, I do have some free stuff on my website, apfuchs.ca or canisterx.com, same place, the realm of heroes and monsters. So you can check them out there as well. So if you're looking for like a do this, do that approach, those are good resources, the Patreon page and my general website. But in terms of what we talked about for this particular series, I think the message is now clear. It's about the principles behind it. And like even when you're doing the copycat method, for example, again, look at the principles behind what your buddy's doing and take those principles and activate them in your own stuff, and it will work. It will work because they're principles. If it doesn't work, it means that you didn't use the principle. So anyway, that's basically it in conclusion. I hope you enjoyed this little series. I hope you found the first part, the very first video, encouraging as a beginning point. I hope you learned something along the way throughout the remaining videos, even the Let It Cook video. And for this one here, I hope we learned that it's not about a recipe, but it's about principles. Okay, I can make a comparison to baking cookies and the principles involved with that, because baking is a lot of basically science in a stove. So I mean, but the point is, I don't need to get into that for you because you're smart enough, but you get the idea. Okay, principles, principles, principles. That being said, using those principles, I'm going to go and move a pile of these. So hope you enjoyed this series, and we'll see you next video on whatever we're going to talk about on AuthorTube next. Cheers. Subscribe, like, comment, of course. because I mean, supporting the channel really helps support the art, and that's really good because I need the support of the art because I want to bring you more stuff. So help me out by giving a subscription, and that'll help me get you more artwork and more books and more comics and more fun stuff and videos and things as we go along. All right? Have a good time. Have a good weekend. Have a good evening. Have a good day. Have a good night. Have a good whatever whenever you're watching this. Cheers.